So right now I'm based at the Division of Neonatology, the Department of Pediatrics at the LMU Hospital in Munich. And I'll tell you today about a project called the PUMPed Project. PUMPed stands for Profiling and Understanding Milk Pumps, Expenses, and Disbursement. So the PUMP project is funded by a small foundation called the Friedrich Bauer Foundation that's affiliated with our medical faculty. And my salary is paid by the Bayerische Gleichstellungsförderung, which is the women's representative at our university. And my disclosures outside of the PUMP project are that I'm a textbook author and editor, associate editor at JHL, and that I've worked as a consultant for numerous UN organizations and German organizations, and have received travel reimbursement for speaking at different European conferences. So if I don't answer all your questions about the PEMP project in the next like 15 minutes, I just want to let you know that we have a website that you can check out. It's www.pumpedproject.de. It's project with a K. So you can check that out and see like what we're up to. We're presenting our current publications and like if we have any news to share. So feel free to look it up. So most people, when they think about breastfeeding, they imagine direct, breastfeeding at the breast, skin to skin, a mother and a baby suckling. And that's true sometimes, but for a lot of women, the reality is that they need to use a breast pump or express their milk to maintain their milk supply. This is for a variety of clinical reasons, either in the mother or in the infant. And we don't have a lot of scientific data or information from Europe about pumping. And although, we know it's pretty popular in the United States or in Canada, and places, in the West, we don't have a ton of real scientific data on it. So we wanted to just do some preliminary kind of descriptive studies of pumping in Germany. So the first thing we did is we set out to answer the question sort of from like a health services or research perspective, like how do mothers obtain a breast pump in Germany? And so we came up with these pathways. The first one being a pathway within a hospital. So most women give birth in a hospital in Germany, and they would be able to obtain a breast pump basically on the postpartum floor. If they needed it, they could, have a breast pump like wheeled into their hospital room for use if they had a clinical like indication for it. And the expenses for that are either not billed because the hospital owns the pump, or it goes through the hospital billing system. And then the other two pathways would be like as an outpatient. So once a mother is discharged from the hospital, she might need a breast pump and would go to her obstetrician or gynecologist to get a prescription. So in order to do that, she would need a medical indication for a prescription, either in herself or an infant. And in this case, from the health services side, she would be able to either rent a breast pump or purchase a breast pump, and this could be then reimbursed by her health insurance. And then the final pathway is for mothers who want to pump their milk but don't necessarily have a medical indication to do so. So they just might want to pump their milk for personal reasons, go back to work, or will be separated from their baby for a variety of reasons. And in this case, they wouldn't have a medical indication, which would mean they wouldn't have a prescription and would need to pay for a breast pump out of pocket. So the PUMP project is primarily concerned with these last two pathways, mothers who obtain a pump through the outpatient process, or who purchase a pump from the community. So this was a graphic that my student put together. She just was interested to know, like, is there, we know that there's like a increased interest in breast pumps because we see it, in our practice or in our everyday life. And she was wondering like, hey, can we see this on Google Trends? So she just looked for the word Muttermilchpumpe, which is German for breast pump. And over the time period that we also looked at our national data, and we see this upward trend and interest in this word over time. So I thought this was interesting because it correlated with our data, but it's not our research really. I just thought this was kind of cool. Um, so to give you a background on breast pumps in Germany, the market at the moment is pretty large. It's about $72 million value in 2021, and it's expected to increase by 11% up until 2030 to reach about 170 million US dollar. And we can see this also looking at the European Patent Office, that there's just this large and growing number of applications for patents for new different like designs of breast pumps. So there's this kind of increase in innovation as well. What we didn't find, however, is like looking into medical literature that there have been any kind of health technology assessments, which we would expect for any kind of other medical device like pacemakers or other kinds of devices that are used in medicine, and we didn't find that anywhere to published health technology assessments that we know of. And we also couldn't find really any epidemiological evidence of trends in use in breast pumps, except for there was a single study by Deanna Nardella actually at Yale who did this in the United States. So the first study I'll tell you about is just this national cross-sectional survey that we did of breast pumps on the market in Germany. We tried to get an idea of how many kinds of different pumps are out there, how much they cost, and which characteristics are associated with their price. And then finally, we were interested to know like what the sizes are in the different flanges that are sold together with the pumps. And our objective was simply just to explore and describe the different kind of pumps that were out there on the market in Germany and understand how much they cost. So we had a cross-sectional study design and then conducted a cost analysis to understand pump characteristics and costs. And our study protocol was published on Open Science, which I linked to at the end, and we report according to the Cheers 2 statement. So our total data set is based on 282 different pumps, and the pumps essentially look like this. So if you go to amazon.de and put in Muttermilchpumpe, you'll see just an unbelievable amount of different kinds of electrical pumps that are out there on the market for sale. And we found that these are sold on different kind of online marketplaces, not only on Amazon, but like on different pharmacy websites or drug store websites. And then from there, we went on to see, like, if we see Medela here on Amazon, we went to the Medela website to make sure that we get every pump that is sold by Medela or by any other pump manufacturer. And we identified also over 109 different brands of breast pumps. So this is like a huge number of different, brands that are out there in Europe. I don't know if you recognize any of this, but there's just a huge like variation in the types of design. So pumps like this pump can be kind of switched between electric pump, or you can see that it can also become like a manual pump. And then there's digital displays, there's remote controls on pumps nowadays. And this one's kind of interesting. It can be worn in the bra. And then the milk collection kit can be connected to like a feeding teat, and then the baby can be basically fed directly from the collection kit. Um, and then we were wondering sort of like who is the leading manufacturers of breast pumps then in Germany, and we don't have access to like market data to know like who has the highest income or something. So we were thinking of it from a perspective of like who has the highest number of pumps on the market. And we identified like the most common brands in terms of how many pumps they have. And we were surprised to see that the brands actually aren't European brands necessarily. Like Lixada has 19 different breast pumps on the market. Nano has 14, Mom Cozy has 12, and these manufacturers are based mostly outside of the EU and China. And Nano is from Poland, but there's just this huge variety of different kind of manufacturers from outside of the EU. So we can't really say anything about the quality of the pumps that are being sold, but we can just say like the number that is out there and the variety. And then we were also interested to know about flange sizes because I guess we would expect for thinking about anatomy of the nipple that we would expect a normally distributed variation in nipple size amongst women. And we were curious if flange sizes that are sold also reflect what we had expected. But it seems like flanges are mostly sold in this like small, medium, or large. So you can see the most flanges sold here are 24 millimeters, which correlates is the same as like a size M or medium, and 21 would be like a size S. You can see this also in the data. And most flanges or most pumps sold like 1 to 2 flanges per pump to choose from. So half of the pumps were wearable, half were double-sided. Most of them have a rechargeable battery nowadays, and as I mentioned, only about half of the ones that we found on the market were from Europe. And then looking at their prices, we stratified this by single and double-sided because we expected that double-sided pumps would be twice as expensive. So you can see that it's right skewed, and that most of the pumps here on the single side are like around 60 euros, 60 to 70 euros, and that the double-sided pumps are slightly more expensive, and also that the skew is just much larger. You can see that they go all the way up to 680 euros, or about 700 US dollar for double-sided pumps for the most expensive ones. So this is just a lot of money, thinking about that some of these parents are paying for this out of pocket, that is, and it's not being covered by health insurance. So that brings us to our second study, which looks at trends in breast pump use. And this time we were interested in different kinds of pumps. So we were looking at the ones that are prescribed by physicians and paid for by health insurance. So here we were looking more to do like a trend analysis and understanding if the number of prescriptions have changed over time. So we conducted a secondary analysis of German national statutory health insurance data that's coming from public pharmacies. And this is an absolutely huge data set because most people in Germany, about 90% of people in Germany are covered by statutory health insurance. So it's about 75 million people. And we have pretty representative data. So we looked at a 13-year time span. From 2011 to 2019, our data set includes 80% of that sample and 95% from 2019 up until last year. And the study protocol is also published online if you want to see it, and we report it according to the record statement. So this is basically what we found, that electric pumps have increased by 2.5-fold between like over this 13-year time period. So we looked at the number of pump claims that were prescribed per 1,000 infants born. So you can see over 600 pumps were prescribed per 1,000 infants last year. However, there are limitations to this data because we could not find out how many pump prescriptions in one particular family, for example, was prescribed. So we kind of have to guess how to interpret the data. So basically, if we assume that only one mother was prescribed a pump for 28 days, because that's the length of time a pump is prescribed, then we could say, okay, like 60% of mothers are prescribed a breast pump. But we don't think that's realistic. Mostly the time what happens is they get their prescription renewed monthly. So if we assume that a family was prescribed a breast pump for 3 months, renewing a prescription once a month, then it's about 2 in 10 infants that would have been prescribed a breast pump. So there is like limitations always to using secondary data that you don't really know. Like we can't link it to individuals. And I thought that was interesting to show too is like the number of manual pumps. So we have a lot of pumps at the beginning of the period, and this just takes a nosedive like down to 2024. So this is basically doing the opposite of what the electric pumps did. So we think this is showing like a technological transition that happened over the last decade between manual and electric pumps. And then we compared this amongst regions in Germany to understand like were there differences between where you live in Germany if you're more or less likely, to be prescribed a breast pump. So there are big differences, but we don't know why. Like for example, in Saxony, which is in Eastern Germany, this has always had the most breast pumps prescribed. We don't know if it's because they're more breastfeeding friendly or they're more aware about breast pumps or have different like prescribing practices. We don't really know, but we know that they started out high and like increased over time. And this is true actually for all of the chamber regions that they all increased the number of prescriptions over time. And like looking at this heat map, you can see that we have different percentages of increase over time. So like in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, this yellow state here at the top, you can see that they had really a drastic increase. And then looking at the center of Germany and Hessen and in Eastern Germany, in the middle of the country, they also had an increase, but not, quite as steep of a curve. So in conclusion, we think, is the first epidemiological analysis of outpatient health insurance claims for breast pumps. And this obviously shows that breast pumps are an important medical device for supporting human milk expression in Germany. And we know that this has increased drastically over the last decade. And we see a small transition, I guess, in technological change from manual to electric pump. And this trend is visible in all of the different regions of Germany, although it shows up a little bit differently. So these are my references. And this is our team. And I also just want to thank specifically Yelitza Hensel-Augusto, who's the first author of our personal use pump study, and Laura Fisher, who did the analysis for epidemiological analysis of the secondary data. Yeah, and with that, I extend a warm welcome again to Munich next year so that we can hear also all of the great things you're working on human milk. And it'd be great to see you there in person and hear also what you're working on. Thank you.